A long time ago, in movie theaters all across the world, audiences felt a great disturbance in the Force. A disturbance that grew to become known as the prequels. Hey YouTube, what is up? I'm Ty McDougal and welcome to my channel, and yeah, granted, there's not a lot I can say about this movie that hasn't been said already. But I'm going to review each and every Star Wars movie leading up to the anticipated release of Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. Because why the fuck not? And with only a few months left to go, the countdown is on. So Episode 1, let's do this. Now, as far back as the early 1990s, I can remember people talking about a new Star Wars movie coming out. It was also rumored or speculated that these films are going to be based on the Thrawn trilogy novels by Timothy Zahn, which were bestsellers at the time, and a lot of fans were excited about that. But the story of Episode 1, as written and directed by George Lucas, took us down an entirely different road. It was a story about political corruption, where the seeds of the Empire were being planted. We see the galaxy at its regal height, we see the Jedi in their prime, a young and not-so-wise Obi-Wan Kenobi, and a very young yet gifted kid named Anakin Skywalker, with mommy issues and a very dark and uncertain future. Who knew? Not to mention a slew of other one-time characters and other characters we wish had never existed. But Episode 1 was essentially an origin story, and this is the tricky thing with prequels. We already know what happens. Throughout the original trilogy, and in only a few lines of dialogue, Obi-Wan gave us the entire backstory as to what happened to the Jedi, the rise of the Empire, and what became of Anakin Skywalker. But the way the story was told in Episode 1 kind of ruined what I and many of us had envisioned or expected. Like many of the fans out there, I was blown away by the action, the battles, and the amazing visual effects of the time. I did enjoy this film, and I still do, but like everyone else, the more I saw the movie, the more problems I found within it. And the same can be said for the other two prequels, but we'll get to those later. Episode 1 had so many flaws, mistakes, weak points, and continuity issues that I'm not even going to bother covering them all. I mean, do I really need to get into any of that? I mean, we already know everything, we've heard it all before. So let's get to what was good about this movie. For one thing, the visuals were amazing. I mean, it was the first time we had seen CGI used to such an extent in a Star Wars movie. Here they were able to flesh out this imaginative world more fully, just as George Lucas had always envisioned, as opposed to what we saw in the Star Wars Special Edition. And in typical George Lucas fashion, the action was faster and more intense. The lightsaber effects and battle scenes were strong with the Force. But that whole midichlorian thing? George, really? I mean, the whole mysticism of the Force had always been one of the more alluring qualities of Star Wars, not whether it was based on biology, science, or physics. Now, I'm all for science, don't get me wrong, and here in the real world we do have something similar that functioned very much like the midichlorians do, minus that whole mastering of the Force thing. But here it was just a plot point, some exposition to explain how one character could be more powerful than the others, and it was something that could have been taken out or treated differently somehow. Now, as for the final battle between Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul, oh hell fucking yeah. I mean, those lightsaber battles had the fanboys chomping at the bit. Ray Park owned Darth Maul, just as Ewan McGregor owned Obi-Wan Kenobi. Liam Neeson jumped at the chance to play Qui-Gon Jinn, and has had some experience with sword fights in previous movies. Credit also goes to stunt choreographer Nick Gillard, who created the new style of lightsaber swordplay seen in all three of the prequel films. And I've been a fan of Natalie Portman ever since I saw her here as Padme Amidala. Even at such a young age, she portrayed a strong character in both performance and dialogue whenever she went up against the Viceroy of the Trade Federation. The prequels may not have been the career highlights for some of these actors, but thanks to Star Wars, they have become household names, and I've enjoyed their work since. And Episode 1 saw the return of John Williams to compose the soundtrack for this film and the two that followed. If it weren't for these individuals, their commitment and collaborative efforts, this film wouldn't have turned out as well as it did. I do like this movie, of course. It's not all trash talk here. I am and always will be a Star Wars fan. I will include this movie in a marathon, and as much as many of the fanboys out there may hate to admit it, the prequels are canon. Episode 1 had everything you'd expect in a Star Wars movie. It reintroduced some familiar characters, as well as introduced some new ones, and it had some things that you didn't expect. It answered some questions from the original trilogy, but left you asking a lot more. Over time, the people have spoken out about how terrible Episode 1 was, while other fans continue to defend the film and give it praise despite the backlash that it got. So much so that it eventually spawned the term phantom menacing, where one is in denial about how bad a movie really is, despite the evidence against them. And yeah, I'm guilty of that too. But remember, every Star Wars movie has flaws. Was Episode 1 a great Star Wars film? No. Was it a fun film? Yeah. There are many of us who wish they could have gone back and redone this film. But Episode 1 was the beginning of a new trilogy, and the story did set the tone for the two films that followed. And again, folks, it's all canon. Regardless of how much we may hate the prequels or how much we may love picking them apart, in the past 2 decades, there has been a resurgence in Star Wars. The fact is that if it weren't for the prequels, we wouldn't have the Clone Wars, Rebels, Rogue One, the sequel trilogy, or any of the standalone films that are yet to come out. That all began with Episode 1. I mean, up until 18 years ago, we all thought Star Wars was dead, whereas Star Trek kept coming up with something new. But now the future is paved with Star Wars. It's a great time to be alive. Thus, I'm giving Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, a Titan rating of 6.5 out of 10. The story was flat and drawn out, the acting was dry, the direction was terrible, the humor was awful. But it was a fun movie, it had impressive visuals, though dated, and it had an epic lightsaber battle with a musical score to match. Episode 1 may not have fared too well, but it gave us something new and it did bring Star Wars back. And now we have all new epic adventures to look forward to. So what did you think of The Phantom Menace? What grabs of praise do you have for it, and where does it stand among the others? Whatever your thoughts, share them in the comment box. I am Titan McDougal, and thanks for watching, guys. I do appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe, stay tuned for my review of Episode 2, and I'll see you on the next Titan review. May the Force be with you.